WION now available in the United States. Download the app now.
There are many other...
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up we've got stories developing around the world. First up though, the headlines. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson puts the country's army on standby to step in to ease the burden on petrol stations and help deliver fuel after days of panic buying and disruption. Survivors of the November 2015 Paris attacks are set to testify at a historic trial, facing reliving that night of horror in the presence of over a dozen accused in court. French President Emmanuel Macron says Australia's submarine deal with the UK and US will not change France's strategy towards the Indo-Pacific. Germany's political leaders are holding their first meetings as the parties digest the fallout of the election that reduced outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel's bloc to its worst ever result.
Herr Schäfer.
China's northeast region reels under a massive power crunch linked to tight coal supplies and tough emission standards. The crisis has left some homes without power and halted production at numerous factories. North Korea fires an unidentified projectile into the sea off its east coast. This, as its envoy to the UN tells the General Assembly that nobody can deny North Korea the right to test weapons. And we'll start here in the UK, where a shortage of lorry drivers is causing major disruption to parts of some British supply chains. Sectors from food to fuel have been impacted already. Fears over tanker driver shortages led to panic buying, leaving many of the country's petrol pumps dry. Britain has now put the army on standby to help with the ongoing fuel crisis. Announcing further measures to try and help ease supply chain pressures, the Department for Business says in a statement, a limited number of military tanker drivers will be put on a state of readiness and deployed if necessary to further stabilise the fuel supply chain. The military drivers would receive specialised training before deploying if the crisis doesn't ease in the coming days. Panic buying deepened a supply chain crisis triggered by a shortage of truckers. And now up to 90% of British fuel stations are running dry across some major English cities. Medical bodies have already said that some healthcare staff have struggled to get to work, and some schools have warned that online teaching might need to resume if teachers can't get to their classrooms. It's prompted calls for the government to use emergency powers to give priority access to healthcare and other essential workers. Some motorists have been queuing for hours to fill their vehicles at petrol stations that are still selling fuel, albeit often rationed. At other stations, pumps are either closed or have signs saying that fuel is not available.
The last 24 hours has been 3 hours yesterday of driving around with limited fuel trying to find some. I eventually did at the 9th attempt, but I had to queue for nearly an hour and a half to get some, which means that I'm okay for the next day or so. But then it's going to be completely out of my hands. If I can't get anything, then the cab's going to be parked up. People that need fuel need fuel. There's a lot of people out there that don't need fuel and are taking it, and that's causing a knock-on effect to the problem. But an essential users list is what's needed so that the garages can prioritise, and we definitely need to be on that so that we can continue to do our job.
And the government continues to urge people who don't need fuel not to go and try and buy fuel. Britain's departure from the European Union in January saw many foreign truckers leave the country. The shortage has led to supermarket shelves empty of some products at times, and it's raised fears about deliveries of food and toys for Christmas. Critics have blamed the UK government's inaction on tackling shortages of lorry drivers, which have been known about for some time. Brexit has seen the UK ending the free movement of people in Europe as it left the European Union, but it's now partly banking on a short-term visa waiver to plug that gap in drivers. These are being offered to thousands of foreign truckers to try and help plug the shortfall. Up to 10,500 temporary work visas will be issued to lorry drivers and poultry workers from next month to the end of the year. The opposition Labour Party says this is too little, too late to avert food shortages. And for more, we can cross now to WION's London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark. And Mandy, we've just had an update, haven't we, from the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, who's saying there are signs of stabilisation in demand?
Yes, he certainly has. I'm actually at a petrol station that does have fuel, but we do see people with high-vis vests, marshals, controlling the queue because there has been outbreaks of fights all over the country over petrol. So it seems that there is stabilization, but there is still a lot of panic and fear among motorists. And the worry is those critical units like ambulance drivers, medical staff, and of course cabbies just can't get access to it.
And Mandy, the government and the industry as well seem to be hoping that over the next 24 hours or so, as people's cars are filled up and potentially not even being used if they don't need that fuel, that the demand will ease and that this particular bottleneck will go away. But what about the longer term? How does the government plan to address the issue in the months ahead?
That's where we're seeing a series of measures, and they don't believe that HGV driver's license, that's a heavy goods vehicle, that's a very specific license from your regular license. That problem won't go away until at least Christmas, some analysts are predicting. So there might be an easing of the petrol crisis because a car can only carry so much fuel, and the panic buying looks like it should be subsiding within the week. But yes, the bigger issue about getting station goods is likely to continue. As you pointed out, there is measures to entice drivers back into from the EU back into Britain with some temporary visas. There is measures to start moving forward HGV licenses. The DVLA, that's the driving authority here, has said that they have 54,000 licenses that are in processing. So there's a push to get them processed. But really, in all likelihood, there will be only at the start, at the end of October. So still many, many weeks to go with likely fuel shortages and other shortages expected.
Mandy, thank you. A United Kingdom warship which passed through the Taiwan Strait, reportedly for the first time towards Vietnam, has angered China. It's the latest standoff between the two countries and comes just days after Britain signed the AUKUS deal with the United States and Australia, seen by observers as aimed at countering China in the Indo-Pacific. Slamming the United Kingdom, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson talked of a lack of trust on behalf of the countries involved and asked for peace and security to be upheld in the region.
We hope the relevant countries can do more to build mutual trust between countries and uphold peace and security in the region.
On Twitter, the HMS Richmond announced it was passing through the Taiwan Strait on its way to Vietnam after working with allies in the East China Sea. HMS Richmond is part of the UK's carrier strike group 21 that's been deployed in the East China Sea and is operating to enforce UN sanctions on North Korea. When asked about the British warship, Taiwan's defence minister did not comment directly, saying he didn't know what missions foreign ships in the Taiwan Strait were carrying out. He said the government is keeping a close watch on all movements near Taiwan. Tensions between China and Taiwan have been rising. China has also opposed Taiwan joining the Pacific Free Trade Deal, the CPTPP. China says Taiwan is an integral part of the country. And in recent months, China's stepped up military activity around Taiwan. Beijing has been applying pressure by sending a large number of ships which it claims are fishing vessels into the disputed South China Sea. Taiwan has also reported of an increase in intrusions by the Chinese Air Force into its airspace and its air defence zone. Next to Germany, which is facing weeks, if not months, of coalition haggling. The SPD, which narrowly won over Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservatives, is looking to enter coalition talks with the Greens and the FDP. But with the Conservatives also trying to form a government, Merkel's successor is very unclear. Finance Minister Olaf Scholz, who led the Social Democrats' campaign, said the country would remain stable, even as parties scramble for coalition partners.
First, my idea is that we will be very fast in getting a result for this government, and it should be before Christmas if possible. On the other hand, you should know Germany always has coalition governments and it was always stable.
But in the fractured landscape of the post-Merkel era, the most likely outcome is seen by many to be a three-way alliance. And the two kingmakers who've emerged are the Green Party, which got 14.85% of the vote, and the FDP, which got 11.5% of the vote. But the two parties are not natural partners. They see differently on issues like tax hikes and public investment in climate protection. FDP leader Christian Lindner announced that his party had decided to start initial talks to find common ground with the Green Party.
Wir haben beschlossen, erstens, dass wir Sondierungen, Vorsondierungen mit Bündnis 90 die Grünen aufnehmen. Der Bundesvorstand hat Volker Wissing und mich damit beauftragt, diese Gespräche zu führen.
The world is closely watching developments in Germany. The country is considered one of the key leaders when it comes to Europe's responses to international issues, from the pandemic to relations with Russia and China to climate change. The United States, France and Russia have all commented on the results, saying they hope to retain favourable ties with Berlin. In the meantime, Angela Merkel continues to be in charge of the caretaker government till the alliances are formed and a new government sworn in. Should the coalition talks last beyond December 17th, Merkel would overtake Helmut Kohl as Germany's longest-serving chancellor since World War II. If the SPD's Olaf Scholz succeeds in forming a governing majority, he would be Germany's first SPD chancellor since Gerhard Schröder, who lost to Merkel by a whisker back in 2005. North Korea has yet again fired a short-range missile off its east coast from the Jagang province. Pyongyang's action came just hours before its UN envoy defended the right to test missiles at the UNGA. North Korea's UN ambassador also urged the United States to give up what he says was its hostile policy towards Pyongyang. Pyongyang's also calling on the US and South Korea to scrap what Pyongyang describes as their double standards on weapons programs to restart talks.
North Korea fired an unidentified projectile off its eastern coast on Tuesday. That's according to South Korea's military. And Japan's defense ministry said it appeared to be a ballistic missile, but gave no further details. The announcement came just before North Korea's ambassador to the United Nations, Kim Song, urged the US to give up its hostile policy towards Pyongyang.
We are just building up our national defense in order to defend ourselves and reliably safeguard the security and peace of the country.
North Korea has accused Seoul and Washington of double standards, saying they denounced its weapons development while continuing their own military activities. The North and South have been developing increasingly sophisticated weapons, and back in September, both test-fired ballistic missiles. Washington condemned the North's September test and a separate launch days earlier. Experts said that may have been its first cruise missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, a threat to its neighbours. At the same time, Washington did not mention Seoul's test of a submarine-launched ballistic missile, also fired in September. In a statement on Monday, the US military said the latest missile launch posed no immediate threat to US personnel or territory, or US allies.
Internet giant Google has hit back at the European Union in court, appealing against a $5 billion antitrust fine. The European Commission levied a record fine on Google in 2018 for monopolistic practices with its Android operating system on mobile devices. The penalty imposed was the biggest ever for the American search engine juggernaut. The EU says Google used contracts with phone makers in the early days of Android to snuff out rivals. And this was done at a critical time in the development of mobile computing when the market was still contestable, according to Brussels. Google argues the EU's accusations over its highly popular operating system are unfounded and unfairly blame it for blocking rivals on its search and maps apps on Android phones. Google lawyer Meredith told a 5-judge panel Android is in truth an exceptional success story of the power of competition in action. Moreover, the company contends the EU case ignores the presence of Apple, which does impose or give clear preference to its own services such as Safari on iPhones. Pickford said that downloading rival apps was only a click away and that customers were in no way tied to Google products on Android. But the Commission lawyer Nicholas Khan dismissed Apple's role because of its small market share compared with Android, and further said that Google and Apple pursue different business models. Khan cited Google's agreements which forced phone manufacturers to pre-install Google Search, the Chrome browser and the Google Play App Store on their Android devices. Google is accused of making payments to certain large manufacturers and mobile network operators on condition that they exclusively pre-installed the Google Search app on their devices. Brussels is in the process of shaping new legislation to regulate big tech more closely, since the EU is frustrated at the length of time it takes to pursue competition cases. Known as the Digital Markets Act, the new law would set up a rulebook of do's and don'ts for big tech companies such as Google and Facebook. This could include specific bans or limits on such companies promoting their own services on platforms.
Hi, may I ask what you're doing? Filming the logo here.
One World Trade Center, that is the one where the impact.
The cause of India's freedom for many years.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
America is a constant work in progress.
stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Welcome back. Amid growing opposition and criticism, Facebook has put an Instagram app for children on hold. Requiring parental permission to join, the new app was supposed to provide ad-free, age-appropriate content. However, lawmakers and advocacy groups in the US have cited safety concerns and have urged Facebook to drop its launch plans altogether.
Instagram has put the brakes on a new app that it's creating for kids amid growing opposition to the project. That's according to a Monday blog post from Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, after U.S. lawmakers and advocacy groups alike raised concerns that the photo-sharing app could be harmful to children's mental health and urged the social media giant to drop its launch plan. In the blog post, Instagram said that building a version of the app for kids was the right thing to do, but that it was pausing the work to consult with experts and policymakers and would continue building on its parental supervision tools. The company has said Instagram Kids would require parental permission to join and provide ad-free, age-appropriate content. But Josh Golan, the executive director of Fair Play, an advocacy group focused on kids, said, quote, "We won't stop pressuring Facebook until they permanently pull the plug." Earlier this month, the Wall Street Journal published a report that said Facebook is aware of evidence suggesting Instagram has a harmful effect on teenagers, particularly teen girls, but that the company has made minimal efforts to address the issue. Facebook, for its part, has said the report is inaccurate. Shares of Facebook were down slightly on Monday in early trading, but on a day when technology stocks fell broadly.
And finally, the Rolling Stones have kicked off the US leg of their No Filter tour. The veteran British band began the tour with a video tribute to their late drummer Charlie Watts, with videos of Watts at a Missouri arena against a drum solo soundtrack. It is their first tour since 1963 without Watts.
The Rolling Stones kicked off the U.S. leg of their No Filter tour, their first since 1963 without drummer Charlie Watts, who passed away last month at age 80. Sunday's show in St. Louis opened with a tribute to Watts, with photos and videos of him projected onto huge screens against a drum solo soundtrack. As the crowd of some 60,000 people shouted Charlie's name, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ron Wood leapt onto the stage for opening number Street Fighting Man, with veteran drummer Steve Jordan sitting in. Jordan had been announced in August as a temporary replacement for Watts, whom the band initially thought would return after an illness. He died in London after undergoing surgery for an unspecified condition. The No Filter tour first started in 2017 in Germany and was scheduled to end in 2020, but was postponed due to the health crisis. Production manager Dale Schurseth said its design was very much influenced by Watts' aesthetic.
So his stamp is still here and always will be here with the guys. So so what you'll see is always a piece of Charlie.
After the second song, Jagger, Richards, and Woods moved to the front of the stage, joined hands, and dedicated the tour to Watts, who Jagger said they miss so much on stage and off.
After playing the legendary British spy James Bond for 15 years, Daniel Craig is making his final appearance. He's making way for a new generation of actors following his fifth 007 film, No Time to Die. And as the film premieres in London today, the question is, who will be the next 007? Many are expecting that it could be a black Bond or a female Bond on the cards. Daniel Craig has weighed in on the matter. In an interview, he has said, why should a woman play James Bond when there should be a part just as good as James Bond, but for a woman? And we'll leave you now with the opinions of some Londoners on whether a woman should play the role next up. Thanks for watching.
You're not dead. Hello, Q, I've missed you.
Women are so underrepresented, and it could be anyone. There's nothing inherently masculine about James Bond, but I'm just tired of the tokenism. You know, there needs to be more space for women and people of colour in Hollywood without just giving white men's roles to women and to people of colour.
I mean, I know there are some people who say that, like, rather than making a female Bond, you should just have another spy movie with a female main character. But at the same time, like, that movie is not going to be as big as a Bond film, so you're still not giving a woman the same level of, same kind of platform that you would to a man.
There's a whole variety of women that could do it, but it would depend on whether they want to be, and I'm going to be brutal about it and say, whether they want to be overly PC or whether they just want to appoint somebody because they're a good actor and they fit the part.
I think women, like men, can play any character in any movie. I don't think it's necessarily an either-or, but I think it would be good to have new scripts written for women rather than trying to adapt something that's already out there that's a male role.
As Daniel Craig said, having a role created specifically for a woman in MI6, which wouldn't be so focused around the male gaze, could work a lot better than just having a woman play James Bond.
There are many other...
This is right, Arab.